Greetings, messenger.
What the hell was that?
Alright boys, I want to take some time and talk about a movie that's near and dear to my heart. It's a story about muscle-bound men in their underwear, fighting and dying a glorious death. It's the film that introduced me to Zack Snyder, and also skyrocketed his career. And honestly, it's still one of his best. Surprisingly, I never really talked about 300 in detail before, so I think we're long overdue. So sit back, relax, and let's just talk about one of my favorite movies of all time. So before I talk about the movie itself, I want to mention that I have a pretty special connection to 300. So it was released in early 2007, but I didn't see it in theaters. I had to wait until later that year to see it on DVD. But the hype just leading up to the movie's release was crazy. It was all over the internet because it just looked badass. And hell, the trailer itself spawned a bunch of early memes. And then when I finally saw it, it just blew my mind. I was about 13 or 14 at this time, and I was just infatuated with this film. It had ancient Greece, blood, action, violence, and to top it all off, it was homoerotic as hell. So it seriously had it all. And also had a very distinct look and feeling that I just haven't seen before. And then I found out it was a comic, and I decided to give it a read. And I was just blown away with how accurately they captured the images and panels, and how well it told the story from the source material. Seriously, there's only a few movies that go out of their way to capture as much of the panels and pages as possible, and 300 nailed it. The only one that did it better was Sin City, another Frank Miller comic that he actually co-directed with Robert Rodriguez, which I did a video on a while ago. And then I found out it was all shot on a soundstage in front of blue screens with heavy usage of CGI to create the backgrounds, locations, and hell, even the blood. And I just wanted to know how they did it. So this was just one of the first movies that made me actually go and look into how it was made, because at the time I never really seen a movie like it. So I watched the behind the scenes bonus features on the DVD, as well as the commentary with Zack Snyder himself. I was just sucked in and wanted to learn as much as I could, and so I guess it's time for me to go ahead and share some of that knowledge now.
High fives for the women, and open mouth tongue kisses for the men.
But before I talk about the movie itself, time for a little backstory. You see, Snyder wanted to adapt 300 into a movie for years, and he went around pitching it to various studios in the early 2000s, but no one wanted to do it. But after completing 2004's Dawn of the Dead remake, Snyder gained some credibility, and again wanted to do 300, but no one would bite. You see, to several studios, this was just seen as another Greek epic, and with Warner Bros. Specifically, they just released Troy in 2004, so they weren't interested in doing another Greek epic. Until one day, there was supposedly a mix-up, and the wrong movie got given to the wrong director. Originally, Snyder was set to direct I Am Legend, but apparently there was a mix-up, so Snyder was left without a movie. So a producer gave him a chance to pitch a movie he wanted to do, as an apology for messing things up, to see if they could work something out. So Snyder again pitched 300, except this time, the producer was a fan of the graphic novel and actually decided to listen to him. After Snyder explained how they would shoot it, meaning they didn't have to travel to Greece to shoot on location, and how they were going to be using CGI and sound stages for the whole thing, greatly saving on traveling expenses, this intrigued them, and so the producer asked for a test shot, so he can see what he was going for, which eventually won them over, and they decided to give him the go-ahead. And thus, the film adaptation of Frank Miller's graphic novel was underway, with Frank Miller himself later getting involved as producer and advisor on the project. The idea was to adapt as much as they could from the graphic novel to the screen, recreating the images, panels, and getting the story as close as they can. In Snyder's words, they want to adapt it one for one, unlike most traditional comic book movies, where they pick and choose bits and pieces of the source material to put together.
Yeah, I want to know how the hell you're gonna do Watchmen.
Oh, jeez. Very carefully.
The movie had a relatively small budget and a short time to shoot, costing around $60 million to make and 2 months to film. Now, $60 million sounds like a lot, and it's a decent amount, but for a film like this, an action-packed epic, or say like a blockbuster, it's a relatively small to mid-sized budget. So 300 was definitely punching above its weight class, not to mention only having 2 months to shoot the entire thing. So they had to operate quickly, efficiently, and cut down on cost when they could. So like stated before, the whole movie was shot in front of blue screens on a soundstage. Well, except for one scene. It's the scenes where the Persian messengers were arriving. This was shot outside, and that's because they couldn't get the horses to go fast enough inside for the high-speed cameras to actually film them. But for the rest of the movie, completely inside. So that alone saved them a lot of money on traveling expenses, because the studio originally thought they would have to actually go to Greece to do it. This movie had such a tight budget and time restraint that they actually had to reuse weapons and armor left over from Troy, because it was just cheaper and faster than having to manufacture brand new swords, shields, and armor. By the end of the 2 months, there were over 1,500 visual effects shots, and the post-production to get everything done took much longer than it did to actually film everything, taking about a year. Apparently 10 different special effect companies worked on it, and then by the end of 2006, they had an early screening, but then it officially released worldwide in March of 2007, and it was incredibly successful, bringing in over $430 million on its $60 million budget, a massive return on investment. The reviews were mostly positive as well, with many just being impressed by its stylish visuals and action, which is really what it's remembered for, as well as how much it achieved using CGI. Nowadays, CGI usage is commonplace, but to use it this much, but more importantly, make it look look this good is what really made it impressive and stand out, especially in 2007. Now I want to take some time to talk about the movie itself. This won't be a recap of the whole thing, and instead of me listing off what this movie does well, and more importantly, some of the overlooked aspects that really add to the quality. So let's get into it.
Your mama's so stupid, she thought Tupac Shakur was a Jewish holiday.
So I want to start by saying this. I genuinely believe that this is one of Snyder's best works. Now, a lot of other people often say that this is Snyder's best movie, and they're usually saying it to be condescending because most of it is just straight up action and cool ass shots, which he does well. But there's actually a bit more going on here than just that. And this movie actually really highlights his strengths. For starters, yeah, the movie is filled with cool ass shots, sick action, and not to mention slow-mo. And the action and the look of this movie has been talked about to death. And at this point, people just know it excels in those aspects. It kind of goes without saying, but what I want to focus on at the moment is the overlooked aspect of the unreliable narrator. Now I know every teacher ever likes to talk about how historically inaccurate this movie is, and yeah, that's true, but that's actually not the point of the movie. You see, 300 uses an unreliable narrator, and it's shown throughout the movie that this is a story being told to other Spartans before they go into battle. So in turn, the feats and accomplishments of their comrades and king are greatly embellished, and their enemy, the Persians, are vilified to a crazy degree, to the point where they're described as monsters. Their actions, their King Xerxes, these crazy beasts, the immortals, all played up to show how powerful and evil the enemy is, but at the same time, showing how courageous and noble their comrades were for standing up against them. The unreliable narrator angle is actually played up more in the graphic novel, by having the narrator actually change on a few occasions. But in the movie, it's more straightforward, by having these cutaways and narrations from just one guy, Dilios. It's a very simple storytelling technique that I'm surprised many people overlook when talking about this movie. It adds an extra layer by adding more depth to the pretty simple and straightforward story. It explains why so much of this movie feels unbelievable and really historically inaccurate. And that's because it's supposed to be, even within the context of the movie. Once you realize the whole story is being embellished to empower other Spartans, so much more of the movie makes sense. Like how the consul members are shown as being grotesque, well that's because they're greedy and corrupt. Or how the wolf that young Leonidas kills is crazy massive, but yet the young king was able to kill it, to show just how skillful he was. Or how the Persians brought giant beasts and used what they called magic to fight against Spartans. All this to make the Spartans' feats look much more triumphant. It gives it an almost fantastical element to the tale. So this whole aspect of the movie is usually just ignored, which is a shame because it actually makes so much of the movie make sense because, yeah, it's based on a true event, but yet so many things just are completely inaccurate. It's very simple, but often overlooked. Another good addition that actually wasn't in the original graphic novel was the subplot with Leonidas' wife trying to gather support. This was to show more of Sparta and the political side of it all. It was a nice addition to help make this world feel more fleshed out. Now, a stylistic choice that Snyder is known for is slow-mo. And yeah, he's kind of using it like crazy nowadays, but for 300, a lot of slow-mo is used for more dramatic and important moments. Like in the beginning, when he draws his sword on the messenger. There's a moment where he looks around at all his people and his wife before he makes that decision. This is slowed down to illustrate to the viewer what Leonidas is thinking about before he makes his decision. And again, later on at the end of the movie, when he drops to his knees in front of Xerxes. Him kneeling and then the surprise attack immediately after, all in slow-mo. As well as when he throws the spear at Xerxes and hits his face. So the slow-mo is used here for one, yeah, it looks cool, but more importantly, to highlight important and impactful decisions. This would be something that he would continue throughout his career, but I think it's on full display the best here. He has a lot of slow-mo, especially in the action scenes, but it never feels overbearing or just annoying. Plus, so many of these shots are just so badass that put them in slow-mo just lets you just take it all in. Now, the soundtrack was composed by Tyler Bates, who would go on to work on the John Wick films, as well as the first two Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And what can I say? This shit is good. Definitely makes the movie feel grand and epic, which is very fitting for a tale such as this. It helps make the Spartans look even more powerful, and help build this image that our narrator is painting for us. You know, the strong, well-trained, badass Spartans, taking out hordes of Persians, using just their skill and teamwork. Seriously, when the music hits, you just feel hyped. But it also has its moments that are more somber. So all in all, a great soundtrack, no complaints. When it's all said and done, it's a beautiful movie. From the visuals, to the action, to the story, to Gerard Butler's change in accent. It's all masterfully done, and to this day it remains one of Snyder's best. Not only did this movie propel Snyder's career, but the impact that this had was very noticeable. After it was released, there were more Greek epics being made, and with several of them just mimicking the film's style. Hell, even Spartacus aired, and so many of those scenes look straight up like they're ripping off 300. I'll just name a few off the top of my head. We had the 2012 Hercules movie, the Hercules movies with The Rock, Clash of Titans, the Spartacus show, and Immortals with the very young Henry Cavill. And some of these were actually produced by Legendary and Warner Bros. Themselves. Almost like they were trying to mimic the success of 300, because it was pretty obvious that it was trying to capitalize on the attention 300 got, but none never came close. Even 300's own sequel back in 2014, Rise of an Empire, couldn't match it. So to put it simply, 300 is fucking awesome. And it's a movie that is relatively simple and straightforward, but has a few added elements that give it more depth than people give it credit for. From how it presents its story, to its use of slow-mo, to the stylish action, and cinematography, the movie is damn near perfect. And really is one of the best comic book adaptations. Yeah, I think it's gonna do it, because I don't got shit else to say, so see ya.
Today we salute you, Mr. Warmongering latent homosexual.
Mr. Warmongering latent homosexual. You haven't returned any.
You are gay!